Hey, hey, hey. How's it? How's it going? Eh? How's it going, eh? Don't you know? Don't you know it's like 86 degrees? Now I'm Irish. Better than Bill Johnson. No, it's not me. I've only traveled with Bill. I'm not actually better than Bill Johnson. I've only traveled with him. No, we do have an amazing plan in store for tonight. Javaz is going to show off his really strong muscles. He's going to tell us how we can all get really big calf muscles, which is what every guy wants. Anyway. Seriously, when I was in high school, which was a while ago, there was guys that would walk around school on their tiptoes to try to develop their calf muscles. They would seriously just walk on their tiptoes. I mean, girls, you just wear high heels. Guys walk on their tiptoes. Anyway. Or you worship, and then it solves that need to walk on your tiptoes. All right, so, and real quick, just for maybe 2 minutes or so, anyone got a testimony? Javaz, Terry, and Julia, and Aaron. Okay, we're going to have to do rapid fire testimonies. You guys, come on down.
So, as many of you probably don't know, I work on an apple farm in Rustburg, and it's basically the largest farm of its type east of the Mississippi. Wow. It's an experiment, really. They haven't done anything like this far east and this far south. And we had a freeze 2 weeks ago that basically wiped out the entire crop. So that was a big deal because we were expecting a major crop harvest. It's like almost $1 million loss. Crazy. And in the last week, a secondary bloom, which is very rare, has occurred. And we were expecting a 90 to 95% loss. Now we're expecting a 60 to 70% harvest of what we were expecting. So yeah, it's crazy.
Come on. Yay.
On Saturday, Sarah and I were coming back from a wedding, and we stopped at a gas station, and we walked into the gas station, and there was this guy. He was from India, and he spoke to me. He said, "Hey, how are you doing?" I said, I'm doing well. How are you?" "I'm doing like really, really good." And we started talking, and he was telling me. He asked me. He said, "How was my English? Did you understand me?" Did you understand me? I said, "I understood you pretty well." Why do you ask? He said, I've just been in the States for only about 2 to 3 months, and I'm working on my English. I'll be going to this school right up the road. And we kind of talked, and I could really feel like the presence of the Lord start to like come in the room. And I asked him, I said, "So you've been in America. Has anybody told you about Jesus?" And he said, "Jesus? No." I said, "Okay. Jesus Christ is the Son of God." And I just like tell him the gospel. I just tell him who Jesus is and what he's done, and that, yeah. And I'm like, "He loves you so much." And I said, he's my friend, and I was just praying that like he would speak to him and like show him who he was. And when I finished, he said, "This is the longest conversation I've had in America. I've never had a conversation with anyone longer than 5 minutes." And it was me like sharing the gospel with him like the first 5 minutes. It was absolutely crazy.
Come on. Julia, you can come up too. Did you have a testimony? Yeah, come on.
I told you guys a week or 2 weeks ago that I prayed for the chef at the club that I work at. I asked him this week, I said, so how are your migraines? He said, I haven't had one since you prayed over me. And I said, I'm believing that they're totally gone. He goes, me too. And he goes, I want you to pray for more things for me. Didn't have the time then, but yay.
That's awesome. Come on, that's great.
I don't go to church here, but Terry was telling me how Jeff was challenging people to go out and, tell people about what was going on. And I went to see a friend on Friday who has retired from the school system, and her husband is dying of a rare form of salivary cancer, the salivary gland in his jaw. And usually when I go to see Kay, it's just Kay, and we sit around and talk. And so I went in and sat down, and her husband just came in and sat down with us, and I was like, okay, this is kind of weird. So we talked for a few minutes and was kind of asking how he was doing, and they were very gloom and doom, well, we're just glad he's still here now. And I said, well, I go to school at this place called Revival Scene, and I said, and my church and this church too are experiencing revival, and I said, there are miracles happening, and I said, can I pray for you? And I told him Josie's story just to kind of raise their faith. And I prayed for him. He wasn't healed on the spot or anything, but I was praying for him Sunday morning, and I felt the Holy Spirit fall, and I started shaking, and I was like, okay, Lord, I don't know if this means you're healing him or what, but I'm just going to ask you guys to stand in faith with me that he's going to be healed in Jesus' name, and he's going to come to Christ because of it.
Come on. That's awesome. Yay. Okay, and Krista, both of you guys, come on up. Come on down. Dude, I like these, like just the quick testimonies.
Yeah, real quick. I don't know if anybody has ever got like just money for no reason, but it's cool when you do. I for the first time was given a promise that I would be receiving for the next 6 months just a lump sum of money from somebody I don't even talk to, and it was just kind of crazy because I'd never expected that before, and I don't need it, you know what I mean? But I'm gonna be receiving like, I don't know, like $300 like for the next 6 months. So it's just like, okay. and anyway, but it was just really cool because this guy who's gonna be, just donating this money to me is he was like miraculously healed. He's always been in the hospital, and at least from as far as I know, I don't know if anybody knows Tommy Fadden. Do you guys know Tommy Fadden? Anybody? Okay. Well, anyway, he's like really big into the Las Vegas scene, and he lives in Las Vegas and does a lot of pastoring there and stuff. But anyway, it was just really cool. And he's just like, yeah. I was like, how have you been? Last time I talked to you, you were in the hospital. And he's like, dude, I was miraculously healed, and I just felt the Lord because I had put up a post on Facebook about just trying to raise jobs, just raise as many jobs as I could so that I had the biggest pool to choose from because I like choices. And anyway, so he had said he had a word for me, and so I contacted him. Usually he has really good words, and I was just really surprised when he said, yeah, the Lord told me to give you some, give you money for the next 6 months. And I was just like, okay, cool. And I really feel like it's to do this AMTC project. But anyway, it's just really cool. And I hope you guys are all encouraged by it because, you know what I mean? It's possible. People do that stuff. You know what I mean? It's just cool. So awesome. Yeah. Not that
Krista.
quick.
Come on, Krista.
Hi, guys. Okay, so a lot of times when I pray for people, they don't get healed on the spot, but sometimes they do. And so I was in Walmart like 4 or 5, I was in Walmart like 4 or 5 months ago, and I prayed for this girl with a back problem, right? And then I went in like 3 weeks later, but I was there before then too, like some nights. And I saw her, and I'm like, hey, Misty, and she's like, hi. She's like, by the way, when you prayed for my back, like ever since then, I haven't had any back trouble. So it's like, yay. So you never know. So pray for people, even if they don't get healed a lot of times, because a lot of times they don't. But you just never know. So yeah, keep praying for people.
When they don't get healed on the spot.
Exactly.
Because they might get healed just a minute later. after you leave. There you go. Did you have something? Come on. That's so good.
So my grandmother just passed away, and but like we kind of knew it was coming, and I'm just like really wanting to be in heaven too, but my mom is in Ohio with that side of the family right now because she raised 4 of my cousins, and so basically they lost their mom, so my mom is there right now, and my mom. Most of you know she has like a lot of health issues, but she was like, I'm going just because they need her. And she told me that God is just doing miracle after miracle. This is in her words. And she, the morning that she went on the plane to go there, she said she woke up at 4 with no pain in her hip. Which is like, and she said, and when I talked to her, she was like, the pain, she's like, it's still not in pain at all. And that's, my mom doesn't experience that ever. It's just.
Yay. Come on. All right, Paul, you have a testimony? No? Okay. Well, why don't you come on up anyway? What? Hannah, you have a testimony? You're like, no. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but maybe tomorrow. A tiny testimony. Come on.
So today I called my eye doctor, and I was talking to somebody at the front desk about my contacts and like all the issues I've been having. And she was pretty serious, and so I was kind of responding in a serious way. I was just like, yeah. I wasn't filled with joy. I wasn't thinking of praying for her or anything. And she put me on hold, and all of a sudden, Have It All by Bethel, the new version, was playing on hold. I was like, oh my gosh. I was sitting on the front porch, and the presence of God hit me like really hard. I could like see, like almost like see God with my eyes like everywhere. And I started seeing like angels dancing in the yard, and like, I like fell over. I was like laughing and crying on the phone still. And just getting really wrecked on the phone with my eye doctor, which is like really unexpected. And then another girl gets on the phone, and she was like a little bit more joyful than the other one. And I was just like, hey, how are you doing today? Like, what? Like so getting wrecked. And then I asked her if she needed prayer, and I prayed for her and like prophesied over her, so it's cool. Yeah.
Come on, Jesus. Come on. So, tonight's Better Than Bill Johnson surprise is we are hearing from, well, you're not a doctor, are you? No. I want to give some like really awesome title. The Amazing Father. The Amazing Man. Half man, half amazing. That was, what, Vince Carter, right? Half man, half amazing. Paul Moore will be sharing tonight. So why don't you give it up for Paul? Half man, half amazing.
Thank you. Thank you very much. All right, maybe you heard this story before, but I don't care. So several men are in the locker room of a local golf club. A cell phone on a bench ring, and a man engages the hands-free function, and he begins to talk. Everyone else in the room stops to listen in. The man says, hello. Woman says, honey, it's me. Are you at the club? Yeah. I'm at the mall, and I found this beautiful leather coat. It's only $1,000. Can I buy it? Sure, go ahead if you like it that much. I also stopped by the BMW dealership and saw the new 2016 models. I saw one I really liked. How much? $85,000? Okay, but for that price, I want to make sure you get all the options. Great. Oh, and one more thing. The house we wanted last year is back on the market. They're asking $950,000. Well, then go ahead and make an offer, but just offer $900,000. They'll probably take it. Okay, see you later. Bye, love you. Bye, love you too. The man hangs up, and the other men in the locker room look on in astonishment. Then he smiles and asks, I wonder whose phone this is. The moral of this story is it's really important to know who you're talking to. And I know all of you, it's awesome. But I don't think I know all of your business dreams. So who here thinks they're going to the business mountain, which would be business, technology, science, commerce, finance? All right. So just shout out a few things. What are a few of your business dreams? Actually, just use the mic. Anybody?
Oh, own a business, start a business.
Okay, great. Aaron?
I want to have my own record label and music production company.
Cool.
I want to feed millions and millions of people.
Awesome. That's great. Yes, sir. Javas.
I'd like to have multiple streams of income, and I'm interested in writing books.
I want to open a tea bar where proceeds are going to go partly to trafficking, women who've been trafficked, but also other proceeds would go to local communities. It'd be to shake up culture, transform culture.
Right. Anybody else? David.
I want to be a big-time real estate investor as well as own other businesses.
Cool. All right. Well, God is interested in our business. And so tonight I'm going to talk about the business mountain. Just to let you know a little bit about me, I went to Marietta College undergrad. I got a, we had sports. I was a freshman. I had played football 11 straight years. And I wanted to be a pro football player, but I had a little problem. I went to Marietta College, and my freshman year, Sports Illustrated came on campus, and they did a story on our football team. And the story came out, and it was called America's Worst Football Team. And I was 5th string. So I didn't see any future in that. So I decided to go ahead and just get an engineering degree and forgot about football. And then I went on and got an MBA. And after that, I went to work for Ford Motor Company in Detroit at their headquarters for the division, the Operations and Logistics Division, which is warehousing, parts, and service, and all that. I got bored in about 3 months, and I somehow spent 4 more years there. My friend was also bored. He got a really good job at Ford. But we started a company together, and it was a staffing company, and we did that in Metro Detroit. And we did that for about 5 years. And now my friend is really, really savvy, so he was able to get our company in front of this publicly traded company and say, hey, you really need to buy us, and here's why you need to buy us. So they bought our company, and so I was in my 30s, and Hannah was about 3 years old, and we kind of semi-retired to the Blue Ridge Mountains. We were trying to think, where do we want to retire? Let's see, would it be in Metro Detroit or the Blue Ridge Mountains? And Hannah really wanted to be in Detroit, I think, but that's a little sarcastic, sorry. So, but anyway, I got bored really, really quickly. I didn't really plan on retiring, but we started a nonprofit organization to minister to international students. And I got so bored that it was embarrassing. I could tell you lots of stories about what I did that year or a year and a half. But anyway, I ended up getting into real estate after that, and since then I've started, I think, 10 or so, helped start like 10 or so companies, and several have been a massive failure, and a few have been successful, and so some of that's really fresh. So I want to talk about that a little bit tonight. But currently, I am part of a company that is raising money to do apartments, as most of you know from the times you've prayed over me. Thank you. I also have an online marketing business to realtors. I actually generate leads for waterfront properties at Smith Mountain Lake, and I sell those to 7 different realtors. We also had a Hyatt hotel in North Dakota that just is going back to the bank right now because it's right in the middle of the oil play, and my partner lost about $8 million in that. We also, my son and I flip homes, and we are in the middle of selling like 3 houses right now, and my friend and I do that as well. So that is what I do. So I'm kind of like semi-employed, right, in like 7 different things. So it's really kind of, it's kind of hard. But over the years, I've had a big problem with business. And the problem has been right here, right between my ears, because I literally believed business was second class. I got saved 31 years ago, and I remember telling my friend in college, okay, so it's like missionaries are here, and then there's pastors, and then maybe a lot of other good people, and then there's business people. And I really fell into that belief that making money was evil. And I fell into the belief that business people, it was kind of like a compromise. So what that caused was I didn't pray for my business for years. I mean, I technically did, or if we got in real trouble, if we were out of money, I would pray. But the problem is I didn't really believe it was spiritual. I didn't really believe God cared about my business. But the good news is he does. And the great thing about you all is you already know that. So I'm kind of preaching to the choir. But I used to have this secular sacred dichotomy. I thought that people, I thought, okay, well, I can pray for people to be saved, and I can pray for things at church, and I can pray for my kids. But when it came to praying for business, I couldn't sustain it because I thought there was something, I thought it was subpar. And I don't know about any of you. I don't know if you have been to Liberty. I don't know, do you ever feel at all, if you're not a theology or preaching major, do any of you ever struggle thinking, well, they're the real godly ones? I'm just taking this. Do you? Have you? Yeah. Well, that's where I was for like years and years. And it's actually been really, really recent that I came out of that. And thank you to Jeff and David and the Seven Mountain School. That's where I've really learned that was not true. As you all know, when you got saved, you went into full-time ministry right then. You went into full-time ministry, and whatever you do is your ministry or your mission field. Unfortunately, the church in general, I just mentioned being thankful to Jeff, the church in general has made business people feel second class. They basically, for years, they've said, well, so-and-so got saved. It's a good thing because they can put money in the offering plate. Or it's a good thing because they can serve on the church finance committee. And there's nothing wrong with either one of those things. But entrepreneurs, people who are creative, have so much more they can give to a church than that. And so, obviously, at the Seven Mountain School, we want to see people who are creative, especially in business, give themselves to doing something more than just putting money in the offering plate. Because think about it, business people have way broader, way more effective communication with all kinds of business opportunities than pastors. I've talked to pastors who said they haven't actually witnessed to an unbeliever for a long, long time. Like they haven't really gotten to know anybody but maybe their neighbor or somebody at the convenience store. But think about it, in business, we have opportunities all the time. And tonight I'm going to tell you some stories about some of those opportunities. The problem, though, with pastors, I think, is that they've taught the Bible through a religious lens, right? So in other words, they're most passionate about the Bible, and they're most passionate about getting people saved, and they're most passionate about growing the church. So they're in the church mountain. And the problem is that we have all, I think, maybe not you guys, but I've fallen into this belief that we can win the world through the church mountain. If we can just get people inside these 4 walls, if we can just invite them to church, if we can just get them to go to the Billy Graham crusade. But honestly, God obviously is interested in things far more than just getting people to church. The kingdom is the greatest message in the Bible. Getting people saved, justification, has been kind of since the Reformation, been made into like the central theme of life in the Bible and history. But the kingdom is the greatest, most prevalent theme throughout the Bible, not just getting people saved. And so we can practice the kingdom. We can bring the kingdom wherever we are, right? It's just like Daniel, Nebuchadnezzar, Esther. They brought the kingdom wherever they were. They brought the kingdom to the kings. They brought the kingdom wherever they were in those situations. So when we think about doing business supernaturally, we're really thinking about the kingdom. We're talking about the kingdom, and we're talking about bringing heaven to earth, bringing the kingdom of heaven to the earth. Has anyone ever heard of Almolonga, Guatemala? Almolonga, Guatemala is an amazing place because the region, the whole region, was destitute. The land wasn't producing that much. Farmers were plagued by alcoholism, poverty, crime. There was domestic violence. There were 4 jails, and they were all full, and they were having to ship the prisoners off to different jails in different counties and cities because this was such a wreck. Well, this one guy had an attempted murder on his life, and he decided to get serious with God that day, and he put a stake in the ground as a believer, and he said, our region has to change. Something has to change. So he began to pray. He began to fast. He began to call other farmers and other business people in that region to get together and seek the Lord. They repented of their sins. They repented for not doing things God's way. And they began to see amazing things. God healed their land. God healed their land. Now the land produces, and I don't even know how this works. Maybe Philip can explain it. That land now produces 3 harvests per year. And if you've seen the videos of it, maybe you've seen it, Aaron, they have carrots as big as a big guy's forearm. And it's amazing what's happened in Almolonga. The farmers are now driving Mercedes trucks, overflowing with produce. They used to have 4 truckloads a month of produce go to the city. Now they have 40 truckloads per week. And God has healed their land. The alcoholism stopped. Marriages have been healed. 85% of people report to being born again. And after 20 years of this revival in these farms and these businesses, every single jail has been closed. Can you imagine that? The jails are turned into community centers. There's not even one jail, and they had 4 before. The churches have changed, the schools have changed, the families changed, the government's changed, and researchers from all over the world come to Almolonga to say, what happened? And they don't get the answer they expected because God healed their land, and the farmers are really happy to say that. So it's amazing. And so I think he's interested in your land too. I think he's interested in your land, Aaron, and your trees. And I'm excited to see what's going to happen there this year. It's amazing that think about it. If it's not in heaven, it shouldn't be on earth, right? So we know sickness, we believe that. But what about poverty? What about bad bosses? What about bad employees? What about workplace injuries? If those things aren't in heaven, they shouldn't be on earth either. So as business people, we're positioned to bring the kingdom of heaven to earth in our businesses. Bill Gates. Anybody heard of Bill Gates? For you real young ones, Bill Gates is the founder of Microsoft, and he's possibly the richest person in the world. But I've got news for you. Bill Gates is only operating at 1/4 of your capacity. Think about it. Bill Gates was made in the image of God, and so were you. So you're even. Bill Gates, as far as I know, he's not a believer. So you have Christ in you, the hope of glory. As far as I know, he doesn't. You have the mind of Christ. As far as I know, he doesn't. And you have the Holy Spirit, God inside you. Bill Gates doesn't. Bill's done pretty well for himself, considering he's only operating at 1/4 of your capacity. But I'm dead serious. You have 3 things he doesn't. And you have 4 times the capacity to operate that he doesn't. He's doing pretty well now. I don't know if you've heard, but he had to retire, and he's spending full time now trying to figure out how to give away his money. Okay? That's what he does for a living, trying to figure out how to allocate billions and billions of dollars around the world. But we've got more potential. We've got to start believing in our own salvation. We've got to. That's what Bill Johnson says. If Bill was able to take what he had, being made in the image of God, and he wasn't encumbered by the church's view that business was second class, think what you can do. Think what you can do. Think what we can do. The problem is that the church has viewed business as second class. But it's time to marry our faith and business together. Romans says that the sons of God are crying out. The earth is crying out for solutions. The great news is God has every solution to every problem in the world. We have the solution because we have access to his mind. So we call this a 7-mountain school. As you know, there's 7 mountains in the earth. And the church has historically tried to win the whole world through this one mountain, like I mentioned. The problem is that means the church failed to occupy 6 other mountains. So they've done a really good job. The church has done a great job occupying the religion mountain. And they've focused on that, and they've done crusades, and they've had all kinds of things. But what we fail to occupy will be occupied by darkness. And the problem is these other 6 mountains have been occupied by the enemy. And then we go out and say, I know you guys don't say it, but the church in general says, oh, those media people are a bunch of liberals. Or the government's been taken over by the Antichrist. Or Hollywood's just a bunch of leftists. These are all self-fulfilling prophecies because we have just said, well, that's what they are, and therefore that's what they'll be, and let them go to hell in a handbasket. That's what we've done. And by not occupying these mountains, we've allowed the enemy to take over. Taking over the business mountain means being successful in business, but it's not just financial success. It means role modeling good families, role modeling being a good employee, role modeling being a good boss. It basically means treating customers as we want to be treated. I don't know if Chris Valentin told this story. I don't remember him telling it in here. But he had a car repair shop in California. Someone stole tires from him. And the guy came back in months later to get his car repaired. When Chris gave him his bill, he stamped it paid in full. Chris said to the guy, I know you stole my tires. This is proof that I forgive you. This guy went out to his car and sat and stared at his steering wheel for 5 minutes. Some people get a tract. This guy got a tract stamped, paid in full. It's amazing. Or there's this other guy who wanted to get his Christian coworker in trouble. He went to the boss and he said, every time I pass by his office, he's just staring out the window. He should be fired. The boss said, hey, leave him alone. Just the other day, he came up with an idea that saved our company $300,000 just by staring out the window. It's creativity. God's a creator, and he wants us to be creative like he was in his image. And speaking in tongues, praying in tongues. I just went to hear Lance Wallnau speak in Charlotte the other night, and he said that the key to creativity is learning to communicate with God all day long, and praying in tongues is the way that he was recommending we do that. He talked about having a blue ocean strategy. Has anybody seen that book, Blue Ocean Strategy? It's an awesome book, and it basically explains that there's red oceans and blue oceans. Red oceans are places in business where everybody's competing, and the red is the blood in the water because everybody's like sharks just competing to try to get one piece of business. So it's like Pepsi-Cola, Coca-Cola, Dr. Pepper, they are spending billions in advertising just to get 1% more market share. A blue ocean strategy is going to a completely different ocean that doesn't have any competition and doing something that's so creative, so amazing, so unique that nobody can compete with you. And there's a lot of companies that have done that and done that really well. Southwest Airlines started out not that long ago. My kids hate when I say this, but I think it was in the 70s, and they started out with these, I think it was $39 flights anywhere in Texas. And Southwest Airlines grew, and they're the only airline that over 40, I think it's 40 straight years, has never failed to make a profit every year. And they did it by being in the blue ocean. They started out, they did stuff totally different than every other airline. And if you think about it, God probably has other ideas like that. God probably has ideas for your coffee shop, Terry, that can be so creative and so unique that no one's ever done it before. And you could compete anywhere if you have those ideas and you implement them. Trusting God for creativity means bringing fresh ideas that keep adventure central to their business. One thing I like about being an entrepreneur, there's a lot of things not to like, but I'm always on an adventure. It's always fun. It's always being creative. I'm meeting tomorrow morning with a bunch of people on Skype, and we're going to just creatively trying to solve some of our online marketing problems. It's fun. I'm really looking forward to that meeting. Anybody ever heard of Matt McPherson? Matt McPherson was an evangelist. I think he was an itinerant evangelist. He had 4 or 5 kids, and things weren't working out so well for Matt. He would go to a weekend, like a retreat, and he would preach and lead worship for like 2 or 3 days, and he would get like $28 in the offering. It wasn't working out as well as it does for some itinerants. So he was like, I got to do something totally different. Now, Matt also loved music. He also loved bow hunting. And he didn't even have the money, from what I understand, to buy a really good compound bow. And he was trying to create one in his spare time. He was an engineer, I think. Well, one day, God spoke to him and whispered to him and said, I've got the best ideas. Does that sound like God? I've got the best ideas. I've got the best ideas for everything in the world. And I would tell people if they just asked me. So he said, yeah, okay, if you've got the best ideas. So I would think, you think the next part of the story is he's going to say, show me how to solve world hunger, or show me how to end AIDS in Africa, or something big like that. But instead he said, if you've got the best ideas for everything in the world, then will you show me how to make a better compound bow? And if you're a hunter, and if you could go back 20 years, you'd realize that compound bows all had this problem. The 2 cams could never perfectly fire an arrow, and they would never be able to get them perfectly straight. Well, about 2 weeks after Matt McPherson prays this ridiculous prayer, in the middle of the night, he wakes up, and there's a piece of notebook paper with 3 holes punched in it and lines on it, and a drawing of a completely different kind of compound bow floating in front of his face. And he wakes up, and he grabs pencil and paper, and he starts copying this down. And his wife wakes up and says, what are you doing? He says, I think I'm having a vision. And he copies down this design for a completely different kind of compound bow with 1 cam on it instead of 2. Well, Matt McPherson goes on to get about 2, 3, 4 dozen patents, and he's now the wealthiest, most successful archery supplier in the world. Okay? And if you are a musician, Aaron, you know also that he went on to invent a different kind of acoustic guitar, and it's called McPherson guitars. And if you've ever played one, it's the most amazing guitar in the world that I know of. And these things start at like 7,000 or 8,000 just for the bottom line, the lower end guitars. Matt McPherson doesn't have money problems anymore. And listen to this. I heard this analogy. Honda sells a whole lot of cars, and they make an okay profit on each car. Tesla sells very few cars, but they make a huge profit on each car. Matthews sells the most bows of anyone, and they make the most profit per bow. It's amazing. And that idea came straight from God. And I really believe from the bottom of my heart that that same Father wants to give us amazing ideas as well, if we would just ask. I really believe that. And so tonight at the end, somebody remind me, I want to really ask for that. I want to ask for ideas like that for all the mountains. Business people who seek God for creative solutions have ideas that the whole world is desperate for. There was somebody in Michigan where we used to live, and this guy was a furniture remodeling guy, and he got really convicted that the chemicals he was breathing to strip furniture were really, really bad, and they were. And so he decided he was quitting that business unless he could come up with an organic, natural furniture stripping solution, and it had to work just as good as the one from Lowe's. So he was working on this. He was kind of a part-time chemist. He was working on that in his spare time. Well, his wife was home, and she was pregnant, and she was taking a nap. And he came home and brought her lunch one day. Good timing, because he woke her up right in the middle of a dream. And she said, hey, did this mean anything to you? C4, H2, C2, Li1, again, I don't know what they were. And he goes, it sounds like a chemical formula. So he said, do you still remember it? And she said, yeah. So he copied it down, and he went back to the shop. I kid you not, it was the perfect natural furniture stripper and polish. It was perfect. And it came through a dream. And so this guy started selling this at local hardware stores in Michigan, and some huge company heard about it and bought him out. Now, he and his wife and kids go around the country in a really nice Winnebago, and they do ministry all over the country on their own dime. They don't have to ask for offerings or anything. It's amazing. That's our God. That's your God. That's the same God that you have access to. It's true. It's really true. We were in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania about 2 months ago, and they introduced a guy who was the CEO of some fashion company. And so we watched his presentation, and it was really good. And so somebody, hold on. So somebody actually looked him up on Facebook, and we were like, who is this guy? He's really interesting. He's really passionate about the Lord, and he's at a fashion company. And so my friend Austin looked it up. It's that company, YSL. Does anybody know how to say that? Yeah, how? Yves Saint Laurent. You know the problem with those French people is they speak French. No, I'm just kidding. But seriously, did you know that the French have a different word for everything? That's a good joke. You missed it. Okay. Those French have a different word for everything. Ooh. Are you? Okay. So we love French people because they have names like Yves Saint Laurent, okay? This guy was the CEO of Yves Saint Laurent, and he's a passionate believer, and he told us he's really young. And he said that when I take vacations with my family, we have nothing against Disney World, they're awesome. We go to Bethel. He goes to Bethel for his vacations. And then he introduces a guy. He started a prayer meeting in New York that's called Legends. And I guess it's really famous among CEOs and high finance people in Manhattan. Well, there was this guy who owned a bunch of clubs, and he DJ'd at a bunch of clubs, And this guy, he led to Christ. Somebody led him to Christ. I think it was somebody in that group. And now this guy's left his clubbing behind. And now he started what supposedly the fastest growing and perhaps one of the largest nonprofits in the world. And they drill water wells for people all over the world. And they've drilled, I mean, thousands would be an understatement. I don't want to overstate it either, but I don't want to say millions, but it's a whole bunch of water wells. And this guy is passionate for the Lord. And he's doing he's doing a covert strategy. You've heard of Lance Wallnau. He talks about covert and overt. You know, the overt is like, hey, I'm a Christian, I got a fish on my card. The covert strategy is basically where his website doesn't mention we're gospel-centered and we're Christ-centered and all that stuff. He's more like, I'm trying to think, like Esther in the Bible, right? Esther goes in and she's not talking about her background, her religion, but she influences the king, and eventually she gets to share I'm not saying share the gospel, but she gets to share the message of God with the king and with the whole kingdom gets affected, okay? So this guy with this water ministry, I don't remember the name of it, I might look it up on the break. But William Wilberforce, anybody know the story of William Wilberforce? This guy is amazing, isn't he, Sarah? This guy is so amazing. He's incredibly wealthy, and he can't get into, what's it called in England? No, I'm sorry, the Congress. What's it called? Parliament. Thank you very much. That he can't get into Parliament until he's 21. He gets elected to Parliament immediately when he's 21. He's a playboy. He's out running around doing all this stuff. He's really popular. And he, about 2 years later, he goes on a trip with his uncle, who was a passionate believer, and this uncle leads him to Christ. And he goes back and he says, well, I'm going to quit government and I'm going to go into the ministry. And he's trying to do that. And he said, but first, I'm going to go spend an extended retreat alone with the Lord, thankfully. Because in that time with the Lord showed him he needed to stay in government, and he needed to, his life needed to be about ending the slave trade and about bringing manners to England. You know, we think England is so mannerly. Before him, it was about 220 years ago, they were not. They were like brutish, okay? And we saw Braveheart the other night, and you can attest to that. I mean, they were like brutish people, okay? But William Wilberforce gave his life to these two great ends. He was on 68 nonprofit organizations' boards. He was really close friends with William Pitt, the prime minister. And over about 30, 35 years, he almost single-handedly ended the slave trade in England. One guy. It's amazing. He also brought manners to England, which is really crazy. But one guy. And think about the Welsh revival. We've been hearing about that lately, a revival scene. Evan Roberts, one guy who prayed for I don't know how many years to bring this about. A young guy. But usually most of these things happen, Daniel, again, Esther, Joseph. It's one person who's on fire. And that's what we want to be. I mentioned I was in Harrisburg. I met somebody in Harrisburg from Annapolis, and they own an ice cream shop. And they actually own like 4 ice cream shops now. And they just bring the kingdom to their employees. They bring the kingdom culture. They're really teaching the stuff we're learning here at Seven Mountains. And their employees are incredibly customer service oriented. Well, this woman came to him from another company, and she said, I've got employee problems. My employees aren't like yours. They treat the customers bad. They steal from me. I don't know what to do. Can you tell me, how do you get such good employees? He didn't answer her. He said, hold on. He goes back into his shop, and he goes to his most passionate, best worker who's a believer, and he says, how would you like to be a missionary? Yeah. He sent her to work at that other company. And within one day, the lady calls the guy and says, something shifted when she walked in the room. Like the whole atmosphere is different already. Think about it. That's within reach. And we can do that stuff. That's not like some huge archery business that might take us 5 years to get to. We could do that today, right? You can do that today on your farm, or tomorrow, Aaron, right? You can bring the atmosphere of heaven. We can do this. And we're equipped to do it, and we're empowered to do it. You're motivated to do it. You guys are awesome. You can do this. We can do it. Does anybody remember when Ananias went to pray over Saul? You guys have your Bibles with you? I feel like I'm teaching my kids' Sunday school class now. Who brought their Bibles? Well, if you haven't got your Bible with you, I assume you have it memorized. When Ananias went to Saul, he wasn't real happy about it. Nope. When Ananias went to Saul, he wasn't real happy about it at first. But God told Ananias to tell Saul, who became Paul, you're going to be sent to 3 types of people. Does anybody remember, before you look it up, maybe you already looked it up, does anybody remember the 3 types of people he was sent to? That's 1, Gentiles. Jews, okay, that's 2. Who's the 3rd? Okay, you can look it up. Acts 9:15. Yes. Everyone forgets the kings. You were sent to Gentiles, kings, and the children of Israel. Everybody forgets the kings. Think about it, though. Who are the kings in your life? It may be the owner of your apartment complex, Josh. It may be the CEO of B&W, Matt. The kings are incredibly influential. They're the people who in our culture decide what's cool. They create iPhones. They create amazing music. That YSL guy creates amazing fashions. And these people have incredible influence over culture. 1 to 2% of the people at the top of each mountain decide the trends and the policies and the beliefs of the whole mountain. So your job is not necessarily to become the king or the company owner or the CEO, but it's to get really close to them and be ready when they have a dream. Be ready to interpret their dream. Your job is not necessarily to be the CEO, the president, the king, the business owner. That's all awesome. But your job, your calling might be to get close to them and be ready when they have a dream. Be there to interpret it. Your job is to get close enough that when this happens, when they have a need, when they have something that comes up in their life, when they need healing, when they have a personal crisis, you're there and you're ready to bring the kingdom. You know, Steve Jobs got the idea for Apple computers, and then he got the idea for the iPhone. I hate to say this, but I think when he died, he was like a Buddhist or leaning toward being a Buddhist or something. Don't you think God wanted to give that idea to a believer? Don't you think God could have given that same set of ideas that Steve Jobs had to a believer rather than Bill Gates or Steve Jobs or whoever else? God has every perfect idea for every problem in the world locked up in heaven. He's waiting to give it to you and to me. I'm serious. We can do this. Kings have incredible power over the mountains that they're in, but they're also often very proud. And they often, I would say they always need to see the gospel displayed to them supernaturally. So here you are, Seven Mountain School of Supernatural Ministry. We've got opportunities to do amazing things. Terry, perfect example, praying for is it the boss, right, of the country club, the chef. Who knows how many people that chef will impact, whether he gets saved or not. And of course, we hope he gets saved. Who knows how many people these kings will impact. Our job is to get close to them. And God can give us favor to catapult us past all kinds of layers of bureaucracy and everything else, to be at the right place at the right time. I actually don't know how it turned out, but Lance Wallnau was meeting with Donald Trump a few hours ago. He said he was going to prophesy over him. Who knows if he won't be the next Joseph that Trump won't bring into his inner circle and to advise him, whether he becomes president or not, you know? Kings have incredible influence, but they've got to hear the gospel supernaturally, like Daniel. Like Daniel preached it supernaturally. I mean, you know, and Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they demonstrate the gospel powerfully and supernaturally. And I would say, and I've heard this before, Nebuchadnezzar was probably the most dramatic conversion in all of history. It's amazing. How much more you, though? You've got the Holy Spirit in you. You have the passionate, burning love of a Father. You have the mind of Christ. You have access to every secret in the world. We've got it. We can do this. The nations are already being discipled through all these belief systems in these other 6 mountains that are plagued by lies, that are guarded by strongholds of the enemy, and it can only be penetrated by people like you who are supernaturally minded and who are really good at what you do. So it's really important that we get the natural right so he can put the super on it, right? We want to be really good at what we do. We want to get the natural really good so he can put the super on it. Because if he puts a super on something that's not very good naturally, I can see a plane wreck, you know, a plane crash happening here, you know. We got to be really good in the natural and do our jobs really well. If you remember Jeff when he told the story of working at Red Robin, that was powerful. That really impacted me because I've been a bad employee before. I have. I fell asleep on the job. I did all kinds of things I regret. But you guys aren't going to do that, right? Joseph underwent a decade or more, I don't know how many years it was, maybe somebody knows, of discipling before his dreams were fulfilled. Bill Johnson says, God disciplines us so our dreams won't kill us. God disciplines us so our dreams won't kill us. Remember Joseph when he was spouting off his dreams as a young man? Maybe he was only 5, 10, 12 years old. He was spouting it off. Hey, you're all going to bow down to me. Not a good plan. He almost got killed for it, right? But God put him through years in prison, as a slave, forgotten, and he was ready, amazingly ready, when he took over as second in command to Pharaoh after a supernatural event. He was ready to run the nation of Egypt, to save Israel, and to change history forever. He was ready. The church we used to go to was part of a group of churches that used to be in revival. The leader of this movement in Gaithersburg, Maryland, Jeff has told me, because Jeff used to live there, every believer in Gaithersburg that was around in the 70s or 80s was impacted by this amazing revival that happened in 74, 5, 6, 7. The problem is the leader of this movement, he was smoking pot when the Lord not appeared to him, but came to him, and somehow he got saved, like in a moment. Well, about 2 or 3 weeks later, this is awesome, he was preaching and he was leading a revival. He had no discipline, no training, and here we are now. The movement has shipwrecked. He hasn't fallen into immorality. He's a great guy. But because of his pride, because he wasn't disciplined, he wasn't discipled, he went off on a lot of tangents that he shouldn't have. And it's not like a cult or anything, but it's just, it's not reaching the potential that they could because they were in legitimate revival, like Revival Scene 40 years ago. But God disciplines us. God disciplines us to prepare us so our dreams won't kill us. Now, Joseph had a pharaoh. Joseph had a king, a boss. Who are the pharaohs? Take a moment. Who are the pharaohs in your life? Who are the kings? It could be your boss. It could be your CEO. It could be the owner of your farm. It could be school superintendent, could be your chef, it could be, there's all kinds of different people that we want to serve without a religious agenda. This may sound like heresy, but if your agenda in serving is to get someone saved, it smells. I mean, let's be honest. Here's the thing, they can smell it a mile away. If your agenda is just to get them saved, or just to get a chance to preach the gospel, or just to get a chance to, promote your agenda, it smells. And they can smell it. The world can smell this. Quantum physics tells us that people can tell other people's motivations and thoughts, even if they don't know they can. They can tell. I don't want to get into that now. But as we do business supernaturally, we don't want to do it just to promote our own agenda, no matter how great our agenda is. We don't want to just try to do what would be kingdom-minded. We want to serve selflessly. There was this guy in California, he worked at a walnut processing factory. You know the story? He worked at a walnut processing factory, and he went to his boss, and he was actually a good example of what I'm talking about. He went to his boss one day and he said, I've got to tell you, this is an unbelieving boss. I've got to tell you, I've got a word from God for you. The Lord wants to bless you beyond your wildest dreams. And the boss is like, uh-huh. And he said, God showed me that. God wants to bless you beyond your wildest dreams. And the guy was like, okay, and he walks away. So the guy felt like a total idiot. He just felt stupid. He was kicking himself. Why did I say that? I'm embarrassed. Well, 2 weeks later, this guy, this believer, gets a call from another company in town, and they said, we want you to come to our factory for lunch. Okay. So they brought him over, and the executives from this company are meeting with him. They're treating him real well. They're being real nice. He doesn't know why. And then they lead him into a room after lunch. This will make you lose your lunch. They lead him into a room with 80 cats. Now, some people like Hannah really love cats. But, anyone come up and testify? 80 cats in cages. Can you imagine the smell? Can you imagine the stench of 80 cats in cages? Well, the guy that invited him to lunch said, so what do you think? He said, I don't know. He said, well, what do you notice? He said, there's no smell. They said, these cats have been in here for weeks. There was no smell. They said, we've been borrowing the walnut shells because he worked at a walnut processing factory. We've been borrowing the shells in your dumpster, and we've been using them, and we added some chemicals to it, and we made the perfect smell-reducing cat litter out of walnut shells. And they said, we really want to work with you, because we know you're the engineer at the company, you're the brains behind the company. We want to work with you to develop a process to process these walnut shells. And we want to buy them from your company, because you're throwing them away anyway. We want to process these, and we want to make cat litter. Now, walnuts are a commodity, but nobody thought of this. This was 7 times more profitable to the business owner than his walnuts. The shells he was throwing away were 7 times more profitable than the walnuts he was harvesting. So this guy is like, you remember the dream? God's going to bless you beyond your wildest dreams. This is it, right? And the boss goes, yeah, this is it. And he was like so happy. And he felt so fulfilled in his work. Until the boss came in a very short time later and said, I'm making so much money, I'm selling the company. Sorry, you're laid off. So the guy got a pink slip. That's an old-fashioned thing for being fired, right? So the guy gets laid off and he's totally depressed. He goes home and he's like, man, I went out on a limb. I told this guy he was going to be blessed. He got blessed. God used me. I thought it was going to be amazing, and now I'm unemployed. And this is how the boss thanked me. You know, he's all this self-pity for months. Then he gets a call from somebody who says, please come meet me. And they said, hey, we know that you worked with those walnut shells to process those, and we know your company was way more profitable after that. Well, guess what? We've come up with another idea for how to use walnut shells. And they showed him, and it was 10 times more profitable. But not 10 times more profitable than the walnuts, 10 times more profitable than the 7 times more profitable shells. And they hired this guy, and they paid him a lot of money, and he is now working with this company using these shells to do something, I have no idea what. But it's pretty amazing, whatever it is. So God has these amazing ideas locked up in heaven. Think about it. He's infinite. He's infinite. He has ideas for things that people have never, ever asked for. We can do that after the break. We're going to take a 5-minute break and then come back, and we're going to talk some more.